Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 14th Valentine's Day meeting of the newly named, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, Committee on Arts and Nonprofits, or Portsmouth Committee on Arts and Nonprofits. Does that sound right?
It looks right even.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Hopefully we got it right. We were a Blue Ribbon Committee as of our last meeting back in December, and we've been off since December. Barbara and I did a presentation back in December to the City Council. We talked about that presentation at our last meeting, but you know, lots happening and it's happened since then. So we're going to just get back up to speed today and continue to move forward. So first off, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome some new people to the room. We have Kate Cook with us today, who is a city councilor who's been assigned to this committee. So thank you for being here, Kate.
Thank you.
Darcy Knowles is on the phone with us, representing Darcy Creative, who's been doing some work for us. Thank you for being here today, Darcy. And I think we have some members of the public here. I'm not sure who everyone's connected with, but there will be a public comment opportunity towards the end of the meeting. We do have two proposed new members for the committee. They're going before the mayor and the city council right now. Is this Jeff here?
Yes.
So we've got one of them here in the room, and Jen Achel is logged in. Jen's the other one. So we have two people. Jeff, remind me your last name?
Barraclough.
I can't hear your voice.
Barraclough.
Okay, so Jeff is here, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce names right now because that's my weakness. But Jeff is here representing Historic Homes. And Jen Achel, of course, is with New Hampshire Theater Project, so we're very happy to have their names in for consideration. Hopefully by our next meeting in March, they will be official members of the committee. We need to approve our final minutes of 2021. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes from December 2021?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jason. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second from Tina. Any discussion or anything on the minutes? All right, seeing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Looks like we're unanimous on that. Thank you, everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not even sure. I might not have a quorum in person today. So we'll take that under advisement. And if we don't have a quorum, it may not actually, we may have to do that again next month. So I apologize. All right, anyway, we've got, I just did the quick committee candidates update. So let's move on to the AFTA study update, which Renee and Robin were going to take on today. So you have yes, go ahead, Robin.
Before we get started, with Kathy Somsich leaving us, had someone stepped up to be our secretary?
Oh, that's a really, really good point.
Ross, I'll do the minutes today.
Stephanie has offered to do the minutes today. Thank you, Stephanie. And if there is anyone serving on the committee, you know, Stephanie's a staff liaison and is incredibly resourceful and helpful for all of us. But if there's someone sitting on the committee who would like to take on that role, if you could speak to Barbara and I after this meeting, that would be great. Thank you for reminding me of that, Barbara. That would not be good. All right, excellent. All right, so moving on, AFTA.
Do you want me to go ahead, Robin, since I'm here?
Yeah, go ahead, Renee.
All right, well, there's really not a whole lot to report, except that the AFTA study has been pushed back. So instead of starting in, well, it was going to be at the beginning of this year, but instead of starting in March, we're now starting in May. So we reached out to them to see if we could get a hold of any materials ahead of time to help us plan, because we thought they would be finished already, but apparently they're making some adjustments to it and it's not ready. So as soon as it is, we'll let you know. We'll be scheduling the Zoom call to kick it off, but right now we're on hold until May, or a little bit before that when we start our training. That's really all I have to report.
No, that's fine. Our Lauren, our coordinator, is on hold for the moment then, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool.
And just so you know, the final release of the reports now is not due until September 2023.
Right, exactly, because they pushed it back. So typically we get the report sooner, but because it's being pushed back.
So September 23 is where we're looking for that?
So the report's right. Thank you.
I did Portsmouth 400.
Russ, I'd like to ask, I'd just like to add one thing.
Go ahead.
Since we're not getting our materials till April and AFTA is going to train us, meaning Renee and our committee, in April, we were also going to train the nonprofits in April. But I think as a committee, we'll probably maybe, and Renee, I'm just throwing this out, not for discussion now, but we might want to hold off our training till the first week of May, our training of our partner organization, so that we can receive our training in April from AFTA, if that makes sense. So we'll work on that as a committee and make a proposal.
Yeah, it really depends on when they give it to us, so, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have
I mean,
to
the
be
only thing,
flexible.
consideration I was taking, because I'm on the school calendar, is that the last week of April is April vacation. So, people who have kids in the schools or people who are working in the school type setting often have that week off.
Yep.
And I don't know what the situation is with all the nonprofits. Is the actual start date of collecting data May 1st?
Well, that's what they've told us so
Okay.
far. They said May, and I believe it's May 1st.
Okay.
So obviously, this is coordinated across the country,
Yeah.
so, it's,
If we end up in the first week of May, that's
Yeah.
not bad at all. That's totally fine. It'll work just fine. All right,
Okay.
excellent. Anyone else have anything on it? All right, thank you so much for that, Robin and Renee. Can we move on to the marketing project update? We have Ben, Jason, and Darcy all with us today, so take it away, Jason.
All right, I'll kick things off. First of all, very nice to see everybody this afternoon. Just looking forward to seeing your pretty faces. Had a couple great meetings. We as the marketing subcommittee have met. We've been working with Ben and had the opportunity to, as a group, have shaped some concepts that were presented early on. I think where we're at right now is a really strong position. I think Darcy and her team have come up with Ben's guidance, has come up with a very, very strong concept that I'm going to share with you this afternoon. But I think what excited me the most about it is I think it can be a very broad umbrella. And I think one of our concerns as a group is in making sure that all the arts and nonprofits of Portsmouth, not just the bigger ones, get coverage. And I think this concept really allows for a wide range of stories, but all laddering up to that proposition of, hey, Portsmouth is a great destination for arts and culture. So with that being said, I'll throw it over to Ben to talk about where we're at and looking at some work.
Thank you for introducing that, Jason. Yeah, we have been working diligently with the team at Darcy Creative, and Darcy and Elizabeth and Megan are all part of that team that have really done some great work to get us to where we're at today. One of the couple other just things that I want to mention before I let Darcy get into the actual specific branding is, we have a lot of work to do. We want to release this campaign at the beginning of March, and there's a lot of work to get there in the next really 2 weeks. And some of it is a bit of a challenge for us as an organization at the Chamber. We are very skilled at communicating within our membership and have great contacts for all our members. Getting contact information for people outside of that list, that fold, is somewhat of a challenge. So as an example, we would love to have some photos from all of the arts organizations and venues and bands and things like that in the community. And we can certainly reach out to our member organizations, but outside of that, we're going to need help from this group to reach some of those other entities that may not be in our membership. So that's just a little logistical challenge that we would ask for your help with. So you'll see a request come out from us at the Chamber today. And if you can help forward that on to other individuals in the community, and I don't know if there's the AFTA list might be somewhere to start, but that again is only the nonprofit sector of the arts community. So it's a little challenge that we need to work through over the next few weeks, but we are going to start ramping those efforts up considerably. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, I assume, to Darcy, since she unmuted herself, to share a little bit about the branding and share some concepts and a couple early design ideas for some advertisements.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for having us here today. I have with me from my team Liz Favini, who's our senior art director, and Meg Mitchell, who's our art director. And so the three of us have been sort of the creative team on this. We've really been diving in conceptually and design-wise for the last several weeks. And a couple of design considerations for the arts and culture campaign branding itself, I want to just kind of preface before we show you those concepts, is that we felt it was important that this be sort of a sister brand to the existing Go Portsmouth branding. So some design considerations and even sort of restrictions that we gave ourselves were things related to the color palette and even the font selection, because these are going to be really working hand in hand. So from a visual design standpoint, that was important to us. So that's part of what you're going to be seeing here as the outcome. We did have several ideas, and we've worked with Ben and Michelle closely, and then Jason and Beth sat in on a recent meeting to help kind of fine tune and hone where we're at. So we're still kind of in the creative development stage of this process, but we're very close to wrapping it up, as Jason said. So I'm excited to share with you what we have. I think it's really come together beautifully. So what we're going to do, Liz, I'm going to turn it over to Liz in a second. She's going to share her screen and show you these two brand concepts that really were intended to be the arts and cultural branding. But what happened in our last meeting with Jason and Beth was that I think it was Beth is really liked one as sort of the overarching long-term brand for the arts and cultural scene in Portsmouth, something that felt really sustainable that could carry the arts and cultural initiative long-term. Whereas the second option felt really compelling for the immediate message of come on out and play in Portsmouth. We have a lot for you to do. So you'll see those, we presented them as two sort of standalone, but what ended up happening is that we ended up deciding to use both. So we'll show you that once Liz goes through the design options for you, and then we'll show you two sample ads. One is the quarter page print ad, and the second one is a standard size digital ad. So you can kind of get to see how they're going to work together. But before I show you the ads, I'd like to pause after Liz presents the campaign concepts, just to get your input and feedback. That's always helpful to us. But hopefully we're very close to wrapping up this piece of the project. So with that said, Liz, can you take over?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm going to share my screen with you really quickly. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep, we're able to see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Heart of Portsmouth. This is our Heart campaign logo. So here you can see we're really playing with the idea of the history mixed with the culture, arts and culture of Portsmouth. So here we have kind of bricks laid out on the floor with these icons that represent the different areas of the arts and culture. So we have food, we have art, we have music, and then we have a little heart down at the bottom to kind of ground everything and point to the word art. So you can see here, like Darcy said, we're using the same color palette, similar color palette to the Go Portsmouth, so that everything is going to feel really cohesive and streamlined across all channels. And have that brand recognition as well. We're still using the same fonts as well, but in a little bit of a different way. So you can see we wanted the word art to stand out. And so we made that orange, and you have two different variations here. So on the left, you have the word the is a little, it's horizontal, just to add a little bit of a different design feel. And then we've paired it with the tagline, feel the beat, to kind of play with the heartbeat and the beat of the city and music, and kind of plays all around with that entire story. And then on the right, you have the center of it all. So that's another tagline option we've been playing with as well. So both very similar, just a few different tweaks here, just to give a little variation to show you both. And then for the second campaign, this is kind of what Darcy was explaining. We really want that go out to feel energized, to feel exciting, to kind of be the main kind of campaign, almost like a headline that we can use on the creative. So the heart would actually be like the actual branding. The heart would go on, you know, all pieces and be the logo, the actual arts and culture logo. But then this go out Portsmouth could be more of a campaign and headline for the creative, and then creativity is the pulse is that main headline. So again, using the same color palette as well to keep that brand recognition going strong. Do you want me to stop here, Darcy, or should we move on to the ads?
Yeah, let's just pause here for a second. And I also wanted to point out that it's always important for us as brand experts to take a look at how things hold up in black and white, because there will be times when it needs to be used that way. So that's why you're seeing it in that way. Liz, could you just go back to the heart for 1 second? So yeah, I'd just really love to pause for a second. I know you have a lot on your agenda today and we don't need to get into the weeds or anything, but I would really just like to take a pulse, no pun intended, on the group's input.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So, in looking at those icons, I don't know what's opposite the fork. Is that a microphone? And then I guess I'm questioning, why is there a fork? And I'll just finish by saying, personally, I like what you've done with the heart and feel the beat, but I would lower the case on the ART on that first one. The center of it all, I kind of get it, but feel the beat and heart to me is more interesting. But I guess I'm concerned about the iconography up top and the fork. Why is the fork there? I would put, what about the happy, sad faces of theater? We don't really mark theater in that imaging. So that's just my thought.
Thanks, Barbara. Do we have any other comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Renee.
yes, I do. In terms of the wanting the art to stand out, the word art to stand out, to me, and maybe it's just because I'm a photographer, but especially in the black and white, the art does not stand out to me in the verbiage. The HE stands out to me. So because that's really not a stark of a contrast, and the eye tends to go to things that have the largest amount of contrast. So I think the colors, I don't have an objection of colors, maybe swapping it on art. If you want the word art to stand out, I think that's got to be the dominant piece. And perhaps if that were blue and the other were orange, I don't know. Anyway, that's my thought. HE stands out to me.
Other comments? Anyone? Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, the only thing, this is really great. So great start here. And I would echo some of the questions Barbara had about the fork, and probably putting in more reference to theater would help many organizations that we're trying to represent here. The only comment I had is the connection between this logo and then the next graphic piece. I lose the connection between the two, and it feels like it would become somewhat of a graphic soup or logo soup, and they might compete with one another if you're placing them in the same piece, but I don't know if that's the goal there. So I don't know if there's just a better way to connect maybe some of the verbiage here, whether it's feel the beat, that also works its way into your Go Out Portsmouth graphic design. But that's just my initial reaction. Otherwise, I think it's great.
Any other thoughts?
Russ?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like the heart, and I like feel the beat, but similarly, I see musical notes, a microphone and a guitar. So those three things are music. I agree with Barbara that we have to reflect something about theater. But I also, and I don't know what the icon is, I don't see an icon representing the history. And there's so, between Strawberry Bank and the historic houses and all that, we're so history. So I'm just not seeing that reflected.
Thanks, Robin. Any additional comments? All right, thank you, everyone. I know how difficult it is to we certainly, don't want to design by committee. We've got people that we've trusted to do this, but I think the feedback is super, super important to your process, Darcy. I don't know, you can keep on going with your presentation now. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I just like to respond briefly to some of those comments, and we did have the theater mask in there at one point. So I definitely agree there needs to be theater. The fork was because Portsmouth is so well known for dining, and if you're going to go out on the town, you may very well be considering the restaurant scene, and that's for you guys to tell us if you definitely do not want to represent culinary arts. please do let us know that. The point on the black and white version where art subsides a little bit is well taken, and we'll take a look at that. And otherwise, I'm really happy to hear the positive feedback. As for the, I'm not sure who was talking about the two brands. I'm going to show you that now on this ad so you can kind of see how those two things are going to work together. So Liz, can you bring us to the ads, please? And again, these are very preliminary. We pulled these images from the current Go Portsmouth site. So once we have a full image library, we'll flesh this out. But what you're seeing on the left is a 250 by 300 digital ad. And with digital advertising, you need to keep things fairly simple. So we've taken away the words on the heart logo and just are using the logo as a mark on these. And when you come to the goportsmouthnewhampshire.com/heart page on the GoPort site, the full brand will be represented there. So as people get used to seeing these materials, they'll start to connect those dots. So you can see we kind of put a blue overlay on the header image because we really want the emphasis to be on the compelling directive of go out and have some fun. So that's where the Go Out Portsmouth is working as a headline. And then the kind of payoff line, what are you waiting for? Come out and experience the heart of Portsmouth, and then that icon. And then on the right is part of the strategic plan that we worked up a few months back. We're going to be running some quarter-page print ads in the Portsmouth Herald, Seacoast Online. So this is just a very preliminary look at how these two elements are going to work together with some very preliminary copy that says the arts and cultural scene is truly the heartbeat of the Portsmouth community. From theater to art galleries and our fabulous new Museum of New Art to culinary arts and world-class musical performances, Portsmouth has it all. What are you waiting for? Get out there and experience the heart of Portsmouth. And then we put the link to the new page that will be developed on the Go Portsmouth site. Feedback on those?
Any comments on this?
I just wanted to,
Oh, go ahead,
if I
Ben.
could just briefly, you'll notice a reference to Museum of New Art, so when it's said by name there. And that was just an example of how we can highlight a specific venue if we wanted to. But I think in general terms, we would, it's like hard to highlight everyone in a small ad. So this was just an example of how we could do that. And again, this copy is all preliminary. And we wouldn't want to show favoritism and certain things like that.
Just so everyone on Zoom knows, I can't see all of you, so feel free to speak up if you have a comment. Does anyone have comments? Sure.
This is Beth, and I would like to kind of reflect what Tina had said around feel the beat being kind of reflected in a different place. And also just in terms of quick copy feedback, musical performances sound very formal. So concerts kind of being also an important language that I think a lot of us use as opposed to musical performances. It doesn't sound so much like a theatrical musical, right? So concerts feel a little more contemporary to me.
Yeah, I agree with Beth. It sounds intimidating. And we want to be welcoming, so concert sounds more friendly. Outdoor concerts, indoor concerts. And if we're gonna go to the, I don't know that it's fair to call it an extreme, but by pointing out the Museum of New Art, I get that it's an example, but I would be careful because there's so many worthy groups. I don't know how you decide on who gets what. So I would go with no one, just so we're not pointing to only one person and others feeling slighted by that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I would agree with what Barbara just said there. And I think to what Beth and I was saying earlier, I would replace the creativity as the pulse and just be really consistent with that feel the beat and use that as the ongoing tagline. And I think anytime if there are images for photography of venues or places I think it'll be super important to put some reference to what that place is in the lower portion of the photograph, so people can start to identify, well, where is that, or, you know, maybe the URL for where that space belongs to, so that they're not left wondering, you know, what is that I'm looking at? Oh, lastly, sorry, culinary arts, yeah, I really think that should be replaced with the other form of arts that we're trying to represent, film, and I would advocate for film, where we have so many festivals here in the city. The New Hampshire Film Festival is a very important citywide cultural event for us. Telluride Film by the Sea is a hallmark film festival that we're so fortunate to have here in Portsmouth. So, and there's a lot of other places that offer film throughout the city as well.
I really agree with that as well, Tina. And I think I agree with taking out culinary arts. It's not because we don't love and understand the intersection and the importance of our industry is intersecting and supporting each other, but we really don't see ourselves as the same. We see ourselves as, again, I think support industries, and I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that. And then back to the feel the beat, like go out Portsmouth, feel the beat. It's like another action step. You know, it's, I like that request for action in those comments.
Go ahead, Nico.
First off, I think this looks really good. This is definitely a really strong start. It captures a lot of, I think, what we want to put forward. So it's really a great start. I'm a little hung up on the heart of Portsmouth, especially how it is visually presented when it's not in that like large format, like your initial logo. When it's just a text there, it looks a little clunky to me. And thinking about it more, I don't know that it encapsulates much of the feeling beyond like the cleverness of art fitting into the word art. Whereas I think Go Out Portsmouth like is a directive and has a lot more energy to it. So I think I have a little bit of preference for that over the art of Portsmouth.
Thanks, Nico. Any other comments? Go ahead, Nancy.
Wondering if in the text you could put some type of reference to history in there as well, to Robin's point before. And then just when we're talking about culinary arts, I think it seems like it's pretty unanimous here that we might want to separate that from these types of institutions. And if you're going to go with culinary arts, they kind of got to mention craft brewing too. So I think it's probably good to separate those out.
Hey, Russ, could I just remind everyone to please get up close to their microphones? I know I'm really old and hard of hearing, but I'm struggling. I can't hear what everybody's saying.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
project, as Robin would say, project. So my comment is that I want to make sure that, you know, we have to be really delicate about this, but, you know, the funding and the purpose of this is COVID recovery, coming out of the pandemic. And I've seen some really effective campaigns that actually reference coming out of the pandemic. And I know you want to be careful about it, but when I read What Are You Waiting For?, I see 50% of the population immediately saying, I'm waiting for COVID to be over. You know, so I wonder if there might be a way to rethink that in terms of we're ready for your return or something like that, that really conveys that we're ready for you. We're ready for you to come back out. I think that might be a stronger way to say that, because when you ask a question, you know, there might be obvious answers to it. And the obvious answer for most people right now, what they're waiting for is for them not to catch COVID when they go out in a big crowd. So I think that as the numbers come down and as mask ordinances start to get lifted and as venues start to allow people to enter the venue without masks in the coming months, I think that we want to convey in a positive way that we're ready for the return of audiences. You know, you can do that without directly referencing COVID, and most people will get it. They'll understand what we're talking about. So that's just a thought there, because one of the reasons the city is funding this is because we're very concerned about these organizations having a return of the audience. I'd ask you to consider that. Any other thoughts? Okay, go ahead, Darcy. Thank you. You keep going.
That's all we have for you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
So I think you all just got a glimpse into the challenge of this campaign. You know, there's a lot of messages, you know, history, theater, you know, film wasn't even, it's a great point, wasn't even discussed, but thank you for bringing that up. So there's, which is like our blessing is a challenge, right? We have so much, how do we convey all of it? So that's really been a struggle. And we've been back and forth, and Jason's been part of these conversations. We've had a lot of these discussions already, but we will continue to push forward and improve upon this based on everyone's feedback today. I would just like to be really clear as far as, you know, we want to launch this in early March. That is like, you know, tomorrow. Like, I just want to be clear. Are we, is the committee willing to have us work with the subcommittee to finalize this and move forward, or where are we at? I just want to make sure the process is comfortable for everyone.
I think now's the time to speak up or hold your peace. So if there's anyone who feels like we need to talk about this again in March before anything happens, you know, let us know now. But I'm comfortable with the work that you've done so far, and think that you've got some really fantastic stuff there that you know, we can offer all kinds of insight and advice on what we'd like to see, but I would not at all be hesitant with the campaign that you put there going out. And I think that you've heard a lot of the feedback, and that you take that into consideration, and that there'll probably be some adjustment based on the feedback today. But I don't have a problem with Jason and his subcommittee, you know, taking charge with this and running with it. You know, because we do want to get this out there. So any disagreements? Go ahead, Barbara.
Russ, I agree to a point though, and so I'll be the one to say, this is so important. And we've had some common comments here from a number of us about what we'd like to see that are really important for us. And so I would prefer to see it one more time before releasing it.
I think as a co-chair, I think everyone would give you the ability to do that. And I trust Jason has really heard all the feedback, and will really take that to heart and bring it to the team and make sure it's there. So Jason, if you could include Barbara in the review process going forward to make sure. And if there's anyone else who really feels strongly that they'd like to do that, you know, let Barbara and I know. But you know, working for an organization that does a lot of design and marketing, it becomes challenging the more people you have, you know, and we all know that, we all do it. So everyone's got great intentions, but let's try and keep the group small and keep this moving forward. Okay. Any other comments or questions before we close out this part of the meeting?
Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you to your entire team. We really appreciate your being here
Thank
today.
you.
We really value and appreciate all of your work on this. Great job.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be part of it. We do appreciate it. Take care. Have a good rest of the meeting. Bye.
Thank you. All right, the next thing on our agenda is a discussion of the proposed projects for 2022 and 2023 that came up at the end of the last calendar year that were presented in the report that Barbara and I did to the city back in the fall. And I don't know if Councilor Cook has any input or thoughts on the funding process regarding American Rescue Plan funds. I know that that's stuff that's still in flux and hasn't finally been decided yet. But just to get everyone back on the same page, you know, Barbara and I had put in a request for, I believe, about $480,000 of ARPA funding to pursue all of these various projects that we thought fit in well with the requirements of ARPA funding, and you know, things that would really move our work forward with the city. So before we go any further, maybe this is a good time, Kate, because I haven't had you speak yet today, but to welcome you and ask if you have any insight from the city end on our work, and particularly funding for our work.
Thank you so much. So the way the city council is going to address the ARPA funds really just hasn't been decided at this point. we've asked for a briefing on ARPA and what our options are, but the documentation around ARPA right now is pretty significant. And our finance department is going through about 400 pages in rules and guidelines around ARPA. So until they finish that process, we're kind of in a holding pattern still on how we will be spending those funds. And right now, the council's really focused on the budgetary process and the capital improvement plan, because we have to address that first, and the capital improvement plan comes up in March. So that's really soon. We wrap up the budget process in May, June timeline. So hopefully, once our finance department gets through the majority of budget, then we will get that briefing on ARPA and how we can spend those funds. I will say that as the city councilor to this committee, I am your advocate at the city council level for funds for arts. So I took that recommendation on board, and I will be supporting the committee and representing the committee, the council, when it comes to ARPA funds and making those requests on your behalf. So, and I'm happy to serve that function. If there are any additional funding requests, I would love to hear. So, and I will continue to look for those additional support for the arts wherever I can do so, even in the budgetary process, because we don't wrap that up yet.
Excellent, thank you. For those that may be watching from home, the video of this, one of the reasons we're talking about funding from ARPA and funding from the city is because the origin of this group and this committee is specific to identifying ways that the city can help arts nonprofits recover as we come out of this pandemic. So, you know, our purpose is really to identify and work with the city, find ways that the city can actually interact with the arts and culture scene and nonprofits within the community, particularly arts and culture and history nonprofits, and how we can support these organizations and this sector so that we come out of this strong, because there's a significant risk. It's been very challenging over the past couple of years. It continues to be challenging for a lot of these organizations. And we want to make sure that when we get to 2025, all of these organizations and all of our arts and culture are still intact, still here, and even better, are healthy. So that's the reasoning behind working with the city, because we've been called by the city to ask the city and to identify ways the city can assist in this process, because the city recognizes the value of the cultural economy and the arts sector and what it means to Portsmouth's economy overall. And we're trying to identify. So the one other thing I'd add, Councilor Cook, is that you know, we're really actually thrilled to start this year with the city councilor involved, because you know, ARPA funds are not necessarily the only option for city support for what we're doing here. We want to find the best match, the best opportunities for the city to have the most significant impact in helping these organizations recover and make it through the next few years. I said a year ago that we're looking at what is likely a 5-year recovery from everything that happened in 2020 and throughout 2021. So we're just 1 year into that. So we've got a long way to go. So looking at the agenda, the first thing I put on there, go ahead, Robin.
Russ, yeah, I just wanted to make a note about the agenda. I would include AFTA as one of the proposed projects.
Yes.
So there should be an E, and that should just be added.
Yeah, the only reason I left AFTA and marketing off is I give them their own agenda items rather than putting them in. Maybe it just should say a discussion of additional proposed projects.
Okay.
Is probably what it should say. Maybe
Okay,
that's where my error is.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure that it was a similar project.
Yes, it is. It is, and so is the marketing project that we just discussed. Go ahead, Barbara.
Just one more thing for the group too. You know, the last time we met that night is when Russ and I presented to the city council in December. And on the heels of that, Nancy Carmer invited us to do the same presentation, and we'll be doing that for the Economic Development Commission. So, you know, Russ and I were really honored to be asked to do that, and I think it's a an important thing for all of us to understand that the city is taking us seriously. And to have the EDC, invite us to present to them, and certainly potentially to have them as a supporter is really good and important news for us.
And we're scheduled to speak to the EDC on Friday, March 4th. So just an update. So it will be before our next meeting that we actually speak before the EDC. So I do want to take a few moments to talk
Russ,
about.
I just gotta tell you that the EDC changed that date to the 11th because the first week was a school vacation.
It is school vacation week. I was like coming back from vacation a little early to go do that. I was like, I already postponed. I can't postpone on it again. All right, great, that's fine. It doesn't change anything for me. That's good. That's good.
Sorry about that.
No, that's so that gives me extra vacation time. I'm very thrilled about that. So March 11th is totally fine. As I like to throw in anecdotes, the 11th is my father's 80th birthday. So I'll start the morning with the EDC and finish the day with my dad. So, which is great. So the cultural plan, we've got a lot on our plate, but I think the cultural plan is one of those things that's critically important. We have the right people at the table for something like this. It's been done once before by the city, and it's going to take some heavy lifting and some time to do. It's not a quick process. So I am wondering where to start with this. And I think where it's probably going to start is by identifying those who were involved with the last cultural plan and seeing if we can get some people to come on board in a subcommittee like setting to do some initial planning for what the next cultural planning process would be. I could see that involving representation from this committee, representation from either the committee or the subgroups that were involved with the 2002 plan, and representatives from city staff. I would hope there would be some interest there to be involved in that process early on. Am I missing anything in forming that type of group?
Russ, I think just that in the past one, I do believe the city hired a company or an individual to lead the plan. So it wasn't self-led. I mean, there must have been an RFP, and I think the people who did the former one would be able to tell us that, like Chris Dwyer and Ellen Feinberg.
We
No,
didn't
I
hire
agree.
anyone.
Oh, you didn't hire anyone?
We did not hire anybody.
Oh, so sorry, Nancy. I was always under the assumption that there had been a company that came in to do it. Thanks for clearing.
No, it was planned by committee. That's why it took 18 months.
Which is why I'm bringing it up in
Yeah,
February of
yeah.
2021 or 2022. We want to get it done by 2023.
Once the council authorized formation of a committee for the cultural plan, it was an interesting process. We actually developed an application and people applied to participate in it. And I think we ended up with probably around 11 people. But again, had to interview, had to say why you wanted to do it. And then we did this exercise where we put everybody in the same room to see how everyone played together in the sandbox, knowing that this was going to be a rigorous process. So we didn't hire anybody. There were some really talented people on it. And it was based on some work that UMass Amherst professor did. We had a lot of good models. We went to some courses for that and kind of just did it on our own. That was the history.
Was Portsmouth Listens involved with the listening groups?
Portsmouth Listens was not a thing.
Okay. Do you think they might be a resource for a future plan?
I think it's worth asking. I also think it's worth, circling back to our planning department too, as we look forward to master plan, because this really has to sink in with long range planning as well.
And is there a timeline for the next master plan?
Probably.
I'm sure there is. Well, we should figure that out. We should understand.
Yeah, and we have
so
a
we
new
don't miss the
planning
boat.
director, and I think it would be interesting to have a conversation with Beverly as well. So.
It's listed on the website.
I
just had to look it up, yeah.
Well, maybe the place to start would be for you, Nancy, Barbara, and myself to have a conversation with Beverly and move forward with that. Okay. But I think that this is for me, the trickiest of all the ones on the list, because it's a high priority for us. It's a big undertaking, and it's probably going to be the most public facing thing this group will ever do. And it's going to have the largest ramifications for a significant period of time. The 2002 cultural plan had incredible ramifications for this community. You know, I don't think you can, the reason that there's interest in going forward with another cultural plan is because how powerful that one was in 2002 and how much was accomplished as a result of it. So I think that we're on the right track to get this started, but I want to make sure we do that in a timely fashion. Go ahead, Kate.
I also think it would be really helpful to have an idea of basic costs around what it would take to create a cultural plan, because there's always the possibility of trying to get something like this into the capital improvement plan, CIP, but I've only got a few weeks on that, or into the budget. So, but I would kind of need a ballpark. Those numbers always move a little. So it's not like I need a final number, but I would need kind of a ballpark.
Okay. All right, excellent. Any other comments on this or questions about this?
Just a comment, I agree with you. I think it's one of the most important things we can do. So it's critically important.
Looking in the comment section here, Beth made a comment about whether or not there would be a benefit to hiring a facilitator for the process, even that if that wasn't the case last time. You know, and mentioning that like the AFTA study, it would benefit from some paid oversight management. I agree that, you know, that's always a challenge of figuring out how to manage something like this. And if it's possible to have some paid support, that's always beneficial. I think it was probably done from within the staff last time, right?
It was, I think that Ellen Feinberg and myself and Chris Dwyer were the lead. But I look around and there's people, Jen, were you part of the cultural planning effort? I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. I think I was an advisor. I don't think I actually was officially on the committee, but I advised on some of the different issues.
Yeah, I think you did. And, you know, we did a lot of surveys, including just getting out on the street. You know, the hardest thing was to, and continues to be, the independent artist, the independent performer. But we went to so many groups. I think I shared the plan with folks. It's worth looking at in the back pages, all the input that happened. So certainly, I know staff would welcome the opportunity to have some professional assistance with it, to take some of that lift.
Well, it's interesting. There was a heavy emphasis on historic homes and historic preservation in the last cultural plan.
Yes.
There was an emphasis on education in the last cultural plan. And there was an emphasis on space for arts, whether it's performing arts or visual arts or any type of artistic endeavor. And that was, you know, one of the reasons why I thought it was a good idea and a good time to start moving forward on this is our previous mayor was pushing for this committee to become some type of permanent arts commission for the city. And that's what grew out of the last cultural plan. ArtSpeak became an entity as a result of the cultural plan. So my thought is that if there is to be a more permanent version of this type of committee representing the city, it's natural that that should grow out of a cultural plan as opposed to just an appointment. So, you know, my hope is that the participation of the community in the planning process would identify what level of need there is for an ongoing continuous committee and how we could learn from the last committee, you know, and figure out what worked and what didn't work and create something better for the future. So any other comments on that? We've got about 10 minutes left and there are a couple more things on here. Direct support to artists is something that Nico had been working on. I think that this is likely at this point in a holding pattern just simply because of funding at this point. And it's something that can be fine-tuned as we get to the point of having some type of funding. But without funding, I don't know how much further we can go with the ideas. I didn't know if you had anything you want to speak to on that today, Nico.
Not in particular. The subcommittee met just for the holidays. We arrived at what we felt a really strong proposal. So I guess we're waiting a sense of direction of how to get that.
We included that in our presentation to the city council. It'll be in the presentation to the Economic Development Commission next month. And it's really just a matter of achieving funding for it and figuring out how it will work. And then we can get back to the work table on that. The same is true for arts organization collaborative projects. Other than what I would say is that we witnessed in 2020 and it continued into 2021, what I think was like historic levels of collaboration between arts organizations in this community. Organizations coming together and working together at a higher level and more deeply than I'd ever seen before. And I'm assuming that some of that work is going to be continuing into 2022, likely with many of the organizations that are in the room right now, and others who might be watching. So what I would encourage the organizational leaders within the community, those in this room and those who might watch this, to think about is as you're crafting continued or new collaborations between organizations within the community, what are ones that would meet the standard of revitalizing our local economy, meet the standard of revitalizing the arts and creative economy, and build community, particularly in highly impacted populations by the pandemic. And if you have collaborations or projects like that, you should bring them to Barbara and I so we have some more specifics for when we start talking about AFTA funding. But the reality is that just like that marketing campaign we were discussing about earlier in the meeting, there's a need to get audiences to return to arts and culture activities. And just the very nature of bringing audiences back into our community, including the local audiences, and getting back to business at a higher level than we've been able to achieve thus far in the pandemic is enough justification for trying to find ways to fund some collaborations that will have community benefit, especially if they have a high level of local benefit to the local residents. So keep that in mind. Does anyone have any thoughts on this particular item?
I'll chime in on some work that we're doing, the Music Hall's doing with the Black Heritage Trail, and I know others are involved too, with Jerry Ann on this, in doing a celebratory series of events around Juneteenth. We're embarking upon that again for this year, but I know for 2023, she particularly has aspirations to make that much more citywide. And I think that what we're learning from it is the time that it takes to coordinate programming and to have it well synthesized and spaced out, and that it doesn't compete, audiences don't compete with themselves across the different venues, is a definite extra ton of effort, place of effort and time that's needed. And so when I think about how we're going to be able to advance this for the city, we just need more help in doing that, but somebody that can be maybe that that coordinator between the organizations and that can take the lead on making sure meetings are happening and that action items are being followed through with, and programming ideas are being sifted through in a timely fashion so that we can get the caliber of local, regional, and national artists that we want for what we're aspiring to do for that particular celebratory event. And I think it could be one of the added hallmarks event for the 2023 year for the Portsmouth 400. But like we're trying to work on it now, but we're trying to work on this year's one now. So it's a lot. And so how do I think about, that again, back to how do we make this happen? We simply need some more resources, some more hands to assist us in all this work. And I hope Jerry Ann's still part of this group committee. Is she the Black
Yes,
Trail?
yes.
Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to loop her in on future conversations there.
I agree. Any other thoughts on collaboration? This is still very early age thinking. Go ahead, Barbara.
It might kind of dovetail into this, Russ, but I want everybody also to remember about the Portsmouth 400 activities in 2023. And I think a lot of you in the room, I know Russ is, I am, on different committees for the 400. And one of the important things the main committee is looking for now is all of your important dates for 2023. They want to get them on a calendar so that if other projects come up, collaborations or not, they're really trying to be mindful of important dates. So I'm saying to all of you out there, please get those to the committee. If you go to their website, there's an application and you file through them. To Tina's point, we keep bumping up against one another, and we're all getting better at it. I know Tina and I are when it comes to fireworks, but this is an important thing for the 400 committee to know what we're all doing, so they make sure they don't do something that bumps up against something important you all want to do.
Thanks,
Any other
Barbara, for
thoughts?
the reminder. I will say that with the changes in the programming, for those of us that program multiple events per year, I'm still catching up on 2022. So I would, being able to give you like hard dates on 2023, it's just a little early for us. We might have some of our events that were standard spring events have moved to fall because of COVID, and we're not sure if they're going to stay in fall or move back to spring. We're playing with our own calendars now, but I appreciate the invitation and the reminder.
Any other comments on this? The last thing on here is something that we spoke about in November and December last year, which is the concern surrounding creative economy workforce housing. And, workforce housing is a hot button topic for the state of Hampshire, law enforcement. So I don't know if anyone's had any chance to think further on this, but I would think that a first step in this would be opening up a conversation with Craig Welch and, of course, with Housing Authority, seeing if there's any opportunity for synchronicity there, what they're trying to accomplish within the community, and what the arts and culture see and sees as being a really big issue, particularly for arts and culture employers, both nonprofit, for-profit, within the community. And we're not the only employers facing this challenge and this issue right now. But in the last cultural plan, and as of the results of a lot of work that ArtSpeak did, there was a real push about 15 years ago to try and find a path to some artist-led workspace within the community. There might be a path to some type of creative workforce housing that includes opportunities for artist-led workspace, but it's not necessarily dedicated artist-led workspace, but could also be ways that creative economy workers, whatever their employment situation is, as long as they're part of the local creative economy, could have opportunity for workforce housing within the community. So I would, yeah, go ahead, Robin.
Maybe Kate can answer this question, but there's a new formation of a housing group. There was an article in the paper, from the city, and it seemed like the members were all, at the moment, city staff. So I don't know if that committee is going to open to the community. Maybe Kate knows, and maybe somebody from the arts community who has an interest in this topic could represent arts and culture on the new housing committee that the city's establishing. But that would be if community members are being accepted onto that committee.
Go ahead.
Actually, it's a committee of the city council, so it's really city councilors discussing land use. But having said that, Portsmouth Housing Authority is represented on that new committee, and they are looking at housing issues. So approaching Portsmouth Housing Authority with concerns would be entirely appropriate, and asking those to be brought before that group.
Thank you.
I can make a plug for an event we're doing tomorrow night at the music hall. This is totally connected to this topic, where there will be a screening of Communities and Consequences 2, followed by expert panel. And there's members of the Portsmouth City Office. Director Beverly Zent is going to be there. State Senator Rebecca Perkins Polka, Assistant Mayor Joe Kelly, filmmaker Jay Childs, who I believe has made this film. And it'll be moderated by Sarah Greitzman from the New Hampshire Housing Authority. So that's tomorrow night at the Music Hall, $5 general admission. It's really to open up this conversation, and I think from that, maybe follow through with some action items there. So I want you all to join us tomorrow night.
Excellent, thank you. Other,
Russ,
yes, go ahead, Nancy, or Ben?
Do you mind if I just make a quick comment on
Yep.
this? So one of the representatives on the new land use committee will be a representative from the EDC. So there's great timing with your presentations to the EDC next month to highlight the need for affordable housing, to make that representative aware of that connectivity between the work of this group and that land use committee. So and tomorrow night's gonna be a great event that we're partnering with the music hall and Seagull's Workforce Housing. So we do hope to see a lot of people there tomorrow night. We have a really great event plan, and I think it'll be a great time to spark some dialogue on this conversation.
What time is that?
6.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 1:02 PM, so we've reached the end of our agenda. Go ahead, last comments.
Yeah, one other thing, and maybe for future, I think it's kind of the elephant in the room, and that's the parking situation. And I believe that especially with the proposed, construction that's gonna go on in the parking garage and the loss of a pretty fair number of spaces
300,
for
yeah.
a period of time. That's clearly at least affecting me and that end of town, because as much as you can say, oh, we've got the foundry garage, when you've got elderly or inclement weather or you're toting kids around, that is not a solution for, the Prescott Park Arts Festival in this end of town. So I think it's related in that every time we see more, construction, we're always seeing waivers. Oh, well, we don't need this many parking spaces because people aren't going to park, and it's affecting the culture and the art scene. So I think it's got to be something that we also talk about.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's an important topic. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I don't know if you had anything to say, Jeff. You're the only member of the public here. We have a public comment moment.
No comments.
You're good? Okay. All right, excellent. Is there anything further before we adjourn? Anything we missed? Go ahead, Nancy.
well, I just felt like Councilor Cook doesn't really know everybody on this committee and who they represent, and just maybe people could quickly go around and introduce them and their affiliation.
All right, let's start with the people on screen. Robin, you can go first.
Robin Albert, Portsmouth Historical Society.
Jen?
Genevieve Rachel, New Hampshire Theater Project.
Beth?
Beth Faulkner, 3S Art Space.
Courtney?
Courtney Perkins, Prescott Park Arts Festival.
Barbara?
Barbara Massar, Pro Portsmouth.
Nico?
Nico Gallo, I'm a musician.
And Nico's also on the board of directors. Are you still on the board for
Yes,
Seacoast Jazz Society?
Yes.
Excellent. Go ahead, Renee.
Renee Gifford, New Hampshire Art Association.
Jason?
Jason can return with the Seacoast right there.
Tina?
Tina Sotel, Music Hall.
And you know me, Russ Grazier, Portsmouth Music and Arts Center. And I think that covers, we've got Stephanie Secord here from the city, Nancy Carmer from the city, Ben Van Camp from the Chamber of Commerce, so, or the Chamber Collaborative of Greater Portsmouth. So, all right, thank you everyone for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all you do, and we will meet again in a month. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.